Good morning. Happy Monday. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid, and happy March Madness to you all. We've got the NCAA Tournament upon us, a little bit over 24 hours away. Play-in games on Tuesday and Wednesday to the field of 64, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. All kinds of coverage for you here on SportsGrid. It's one of the biggest events we do here on the network. I would invite you all, especially on Thursday and Friday, starting at noon Eastern, to catch our coverage from noon all the way through midnight. We know the brackets, we know the seedings, we know the point spreads, and folks, it is go time here with us on the show. I don't even need to go anywhere further. There it is. There's the bracket for you there. So if you don't have one, take out your phone, or if you have a phone, you can screenshot it. I promise you can make it a lot bigger than what you see on your screen right now. Now, if you're watching on a TV screen, yes, you can see all that. I understand it's a little small for those of you who are watching otherwise, but just maximize that thing. You know, it's very easy to do. Should be a lot of fun. I think this is going to be a very compelling tournament. They're predicting more upsets this year than ever before. So naturally, for all that information, you want to keep it here all week long, because our morning shows and Scott Farrell and Gabe and everyone else here on the network is going to tell you who to take in your bracket. If you haven't filled one out yet, they're available now online. Naturally, can't wait to get this started for you. And by the way, it really all begins, when you think about it, tomorrow night. I'm going to get to those matchups here in just a minute. By the way, in case you missed it over the weekend, there was one big NFL story I want to get to here. Justin Fields, I was very surprised, only went for a fourth-round pick. He did get traded, finally, from the Chicago Bears to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're saying he's going to back up Russell Wilson going into the season. I don't know. I question that a little bit. I think Fields is going to play a lot next year, but that's just me. Anyway, Justin Fields, gone from Chicago. Now they can take Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick. And as Russell Wilson said, they have a very strong quarterback room right now in Pittsburgh. Okay, the number 1 seeds came out yesterday. Hopefully you caught our programming revealing the brackets, but no big surprises, I think, for the top 4. UConn, North Carolina, Houston, and Purdue. Those are the number 1 seeds going into the NCAA tournament. UConn had such an incredible season. They are the favorite to win the NCAA tournament. Duquesne makes the tournament for the first time since 1977 with that A-10 victory. 47 years. That's a long time. All right, the play-in games. Let me show you those. These are the matchups in the NCAA tournament that start tomorrow night and go through Wednesday night. We have Colorado, Boise State, Virginia, Colorado State. Those are the first 2 games. We have Howard and Wagner, followed by Montana State, Grambling State. By the way, Montana State, Grambling State, that is the 16 seed. The winner of that will play against Purdue in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And hey, we have seen the 16 beat the 1, right? Like, that was like an unthinkable thing in the NCAA tournament for years and years, and now you just never know. By the way, teams that did not make the NCAA tournament, among them St. John's, Oklahoma, Pitt, they have said no thank you to the NIT tournament, as no tournament, by the way, for Rick Pitino at St. John's. But naturally, a lot of the handicapping that goes into the tournament, whether you're betting on FanDuel, DraftKings, or anywhere else, goes to the pace of play by some of these teams. That's just one of the subjects that Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside talked about this morning, and sort of how maybe the Big East got snubbed out of a few teams going to the NCAA tournament. Take a listen.
Now we look at the bids by conference. 8 for the Big 12, highly regarded DRS as the best conference around the country in college basketball this year, but also 8 for the SEC. Teams like Tennessee, Auburn, Kentucky, Alabama, Florida, with some pace featured in the NCAA tournament. 6 for the Big 10 and 6 for the Mountain West. Now, let's go to the Mountain West to begin, because 2 of those 6 teams playing in the first 4 in Dayton, Ohio, Boise State and Colorado State, and the selection committee, Donnie, told us the reason that both of those teams out of the Mountain West are playing here, they didn't really look at the Mountain West as a conference as a whole as strong as many of us thought it would be deemed, based on the committee saying the Mountain West buoyed its numbers by their in-conference action, and they punished the 2 teams like Boise State and Colorado State. They actually scheduled the most difficult non-conference slates around the league.
No, you're right about that. Like, it's almost a sort of a compliment on the back, and then when you walk by, Ben, they slap you on the back at that point, because you got a lot of teams in what you thought it would be, but everybody was complaining, and rightfully so, most of the telecast. The seeding for the Mountain West doesn't necessarily make some sense. So in one essence, they're saying, boy, you guys had a great league, but we'll put you in, but we don't think you're going to do too many damage, and boy, that road is going to be a lot harder than maybe what it should be. But also, it is the Mountain West. They got a lot of respect with the 6 seeds in. Let's see, improve it now, because sometimes you could take a look as a conference and say, you know what, they put us in here. Now it's time for us to live up to the hype. So maybe, Ben, in the next 2 to 3 years, if they keep up that talent in the Mountain West, they get the benefit of the doubt. They didn't get it this year.
Yeah, Jacob Camenker will weigh in on that from Sporting News coming up in several minutes from now. Let's get to the latest in the National Football League. As far as our headlines are concerned, Mike Williams shouldn't be without a job for very long. Let go from the Chargers, met with the Jets. We'll see if they end up signing him. Panthers are involved as well. Speaking of the Jets, they signed offensive tackle Tyron Smith away from the Dallas Cowboys. Snoop Huntley has a new home at quarterback, a one-year deal with the Cleveland Browns. So how about that quarterback room? Kind of stacked there. Jameis Winston, Snoop Huntley, Deshaun Watson. And the Patriots have signed KJ Osborne away from the Minnesota Vikings, a one-year deal up to $4 million. Major League Baseball's opening day away from the United States is upon us. In the United States, it's coming up next Thursday. Pete Alonso doesn't look like a deal is coming with the New York Mets, so he will become a free agent at the end of the season, according to owner Steve Cohen. $20.5 million one-year contract. Unfortunately, the Marlins dealing with already out for the season. Yuri Perez is going to have his elbow examined this week. Jackson Merrill is the opening day starting center fielder for the San Diego Padres. He's under 21 years old. Players who have started opening day in center field before the age of 21, Ken Griffey Jr., Hall of Famer, Andrew Jones, potential Hall of Famer, and Jackson Merrill make his debut. Also, Scotty Scheffler, incredible finish at the Players' Championship. He ends up taking it back-to-back for the first time ever. No one else has done that previously. Kyrie Irving with a monster shot yesterday to win the game for Dallas against the Denver Nuggets. The final score, 107-105. Chris Middleton is back. He was out for 16 games. He helped the Bucks to a 140-129 victory over the Suns on Sunday. Unfortunately for Anthony Davis of the Los Angeles Lakers, he suffered an eye injury and is questionable for tonight's game against the Atlanta Hawks. And Nick Nurse feels confident that Joel Embiid for the Philadelphia 76ers will return for the NBA playoffs, which are, I believe, just under a month away, with some of those play-in games, of course, starting in the NBA. Also, two quick notes from baseball this morning. Again, the Dodgers and Padres are overseas. Gavin Stone has been named the fifth starter for the Los Angeles Dodgers. In Florida, Joe Espada says that Jose Urquidy, left-handed pitcher, has elbow issues. He will start the season on the injured list as well. Also said Justin Verlander is going to throw to batters. Maybe we see Verlander sometime in April. Those are the pitching updates. Naturally, a lot of injuries, unfortunately, in Major League Baseball. But coming up next, we go back to hoops. It's time to dive in to the NCAA Tournament. Jacob Camenker joins us. We'll dive into all of the regions, take a look at the odds over on FanDuel, and hopefully give you an edge. We'll be right back.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the Purdue that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home.
Tennessee's now in my phony club. They should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere
only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This
is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State rule.
Be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that lightning in a bottle catches on the West half we'll let them in too, because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I bought into Tennessee with their veteran team. I really did. But that's, out the window. That ship has sailed today.
A team that wins no games in their conference tournament has never gone on to win the national championship. So you can put Tennessee in that boat. You can put Duke in that boat from last night. You can put Creighton in that boat from last night. They all lost their first conference tournament game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart teams.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Guess who's got his bracket out, ready to go? Jacob Camenker is with us. He also has the FanDuel Sportsbook pulled up, so we can give you some of the odds and tell you who Jacob likes potentially to maybe upset the field as he joins us now here on NewsWire. Normally a lot of football discussion, but Jacob, if it's not the Super Bowl being the biggest sporting event in the country, I'm going to guess the NCAA Tournament isn't far behind. So thanks for coming on to talk about it.
Glad to be here to talk about it, Craig. Totally agree with you. This is one of the most exciting times in America. It's when we all become huge college basketball fans for a full month, even just joining the people who are already college basketball aficionados. So happy to be here and happy to be breaking down this bracket with you.
All right, so let's take a look at the regions. We'll go one by one here. We're going to be doing this a bunch on NewsWire this week because, this is it. It's just a huge, huge deal, Thursday and Friday. And listen, the playing games are cool, but let's be real. Once Thursday begins, noon tips off to 12:20, whatever it is, we're all in. East region, let's start here. So they're going to give UConn the East region naturally. They were the number one team in the country. They're plus 110 to come out of this thing, followed by Iowa State, Auburn at 5-1. Illinois all of a sudden making noise at 8-1. BYU 13-1. San Diego State 19-1. Washington State 29-1. And then there it is from Boca Raton, Jacob, my FAU Owls, who had that incredible run last year. They don't necessarily have the same juice, I don't think, going into it this year, but the committee was like, hey, we ain't going to put them down at like 12 or 13 anymore. It's a pretty good team. So they got the 9 seed, I believe, or 8 seed. Okay, so let's start there. Who comes out of this thing? Is UConn just the easy one for you?
I wouldn't say it's easy this year. I do have UConn coming out, but I was very torn between them and Auburn. This is, I think, the toughest region in the bracket because I have no qualms about betting UConn. I think they're the best team in the country. But you look at the other teams that are in there. You mentioned FAU. They might have to play them in the second round. They were a Final Four team last year. San Diego State, Final Four team last year, is the 5 seed in the region. And then there's 2 teams that are top 5 in the Ken Pom rankings, Auburn and Iowa State. And Auburn is going to be a really tough opponent for UConn because they are great on both offense and defense. Bruce Pearl, I think, is a pretty solid coach. So UConn isn't going to have an easy time getting out of this region. But I think with the way they're playing, the personnel they have, I think that they can go on a run. But if I were to choose UConn to slip up here, I think I'm going to back Auburn, as strange as that may sound. I just think they're well-rounded, and I think they're underseeded. I think they're better than a 4 seed. I could have given them a 3 seed. I don't know if they would have got up to the 2 seed line, but seeing them at the 4, I was a little surprised by that just because metrics-wise, they rank out very well. Bruce Pearl's an experienced coach, and I just think that they'll be able to throw a lot of things at UConn that will kind of keep the game close. So if that matchup happens, I'm a little bit worried about UConn, but I still think they get through this region.
All right, that's one story. The other story is which teams cover the spread, of course, in the East region. Let's take a look at some of the matchups here. UConn goes up against Stetson, and I'm not making fun of any 16 seed anymore, Jacob, after what I've seen the last few years. I ain't going to do that, but they're 26.5-point favorites with a total of 155. FAU takes on Northwestern. FAU is 1.5-point favorites. San Diego State against UAB. SDSU minus 7.5, and then Washington State will take on Drake in the 7-10. Wazoo 1.5 favorites. So we got two close ones here in terms of the spread, and then two expected big wins from San Diego State and UConn. How do you see these matchups?
Yeah, I see them playing out as I think UConn will get that big win, probably cover that spread. I would have a tough time imagining San Diego State will not beat UAB either. I think that FAU versus Northwestern game is easy because or not easy, it's going to be interesting because Northwestern's such a good three-point shooting team. I think FAU is pretty well-rounded, and they have the experience from last year, which gives them an edge. But anytime you get a hot shooting three-point team, it can be difficult to kind of dispatch them and find a way to beat them. So that one's a real toss-up to me. And then Washington State versus Drake's another real coin flip game to me. Those 7 versus 10 games are always tough to pick. I think I have Drake advancing out of this one. I just think they're from a slightly underrated conference. They knocked out Indiana State, who was one of the top 30 teams in the net rankings. So I think that Drake might be a little motivated to prove that, hey, our conference should have had 2 teams in this tournament. Indiana State didn't make it, but will represent pretty well.
Let's move over to the Midwest, where Purdue is the favorite, but this is a story we've also heard before, Jacob, where Purdue is the favorite in the NCAA tournament and they get bounced. Well, that happened this year. They're plus 175 to come out of the Midwest, followed by Tennessee. Had a fantastic season right up until the end, until they lost in the SEC. Plus 310. Creighton is 5-1. I mean, if I told you Kansas was the favorite in the Midwest, 2 months ago, you probably would have said, yeah, that's about right. But now they're plus 750. The Zags are in this conference, in this region too. They're 10-1. Texas 17-1. South Carolina 29-1, and then TCU at 32-1. So I don't know, Jacob. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that are going to back Purdue again coming out of this. I don't think I'm going to be one of them, though.
No, I have not entirely given up on Purdue, but Purdue and Tennessee being in this bracket as the 2 highest seeds is interesting to me because Matt Painter and Rick Barnes, both fantastic coaches. They do a great job in the regular season. Their teams are always very good. They always get to the tournament, and they can go on runs. But we just haven't seen them finish those runs. We've seen them tripped up. You mentioned Purdue losing to the 16 seed a couple years ago. Fairleigh Dickinson, I believe, was the one who beat them. But even in recent years, they just haven't been able to take advantage of having Zach Edey, having 2 great big men when I'm forgetting his name. I think it was Watford was there. But there was a lot of winnable games Purdue has had in the tournament that they haven't taken advantage of. I feel the same way about Rick Barnes' team. So I'm actually going to back Creighton here because I trust Greg McDermott as a coach. He's always gotten the most out of Creighton in these NCAA tournaments. And at 5-1 odds, I think that they could have a nice run to the tournament or to the winner of this region. Because if Purdue slips up or if Tennessee slips up, Creighton all of a sudden becomes the second best team there. Kansas and Gonzaga have some tough first-round matchups that have to face one another if they do advance. So I could see one of them being upset. I think McNeese is tough for Gonzaga particularly. So, you're looking at Creighton having a pretty good chance to come out of that region. And even if they play Tennessee, I think they have a chance to win because Ryan Kalkbrenner with that size just offers so much. And Baylor and Scheiderman has been there a long time. So there's a lot of reasons to like Creighton. And at 5-1 odds, it just seems like a good value bet.
All right, so let's take a look at the point spreads from that game. It sounds like you're going to back McNeese. I sort of agree with you here. This has not been the same Gonzaga team as we've seen. And what about the motivation factor for McNeese State? I mean, this is a huge, huge historical game for their college. They're 6.5-point underdogs against the Zags. Utah State, 2.5-point dogs against TCU. Kansas minus 7.5 against Samford. And then St. Peter's is hanging out there again as a 15 seed. Jacob, they are 20.5-point dogs to Tennessee. Look at that total, 129.5. Can you imagine Tennessee wins and wins by 20, what's the final score? Like 80-60?
Yeah, it would have to be a really high-scoring game for that one. That game's interesting. I like the St. Peter's Peacocks. Like, they played their way into the tournament, so I think that'll be fun. I don't know that Tennessee trips up there, but that spread's a little high if that's the point total. So I'm probably staying away from that. I agree with you on McNeese. That's my favorite pick of this one. 6.5-point underdogs for a team that has the third best turnover margin in the country and the 8th best three-point percentage. These are two stats that can really help them out because Gonzaga relies a lot on the fast break to get their points. McNeese State gets a lot of steals and can match them on the fast break and kind of prevent Gonzaga from going on those runs, especially if they protect the ball like they have all year. So McNeese is my favorite 12-seed sleeper. I'll probably bet them against the spread in this one with a little sprinkle on the money line. And, hey, I might even bet them to make the Sweet 16. I think they could go on a little bit of a run. They are a very good team with a proven coach and Will Wade.
All right. Who's in your Final Four? 30 seconds to go.
I have UConn, Creighton, Arizona, who I'm not confident in, and Kentucky, who at 30-1 odds I think is a good value bet to win the tournament.
All right, Jacob. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the tournament.
Thanks, you too.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the review that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home.
Tennessee's now in my phony club. They should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now. We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This
is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to
Penn
find
State's
a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is
they're
the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I bought into Tennessee with their veteran team. I really did. But that's, out the window. That ship has sailed today.
A team that wins no games in their conference tournament has never gone on to win the national championship. So you can put Tennessee in that boat. You can put Duke in that boat from last night. You can put Creighton in that boat from last night. They all lost their first conference tournament game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart teams. Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live. Prime time.
Back-to-back just utterly stink their quarters.
In-game live. Overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We're going to get to the very latest on the Thrive Fantasy story. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Thrive Fantasy operator that has been part of some controversy over the past year. We'll also get some updates on Massachusetts. Let's bring in Mike Mazzeo. He's got that and more stories for us here on this Monday morning. Mike, thanks for coming on NewsWire. I know, a lot of happening now. NCAA Tournament. We've got, of course, huge draft coming up in the NFL, opening day coming up as well. Our focus, though, to begin, is actually sort of on the NFL, I guess, with that story that is like the story that keeps on giving with this employee that stole all that money for the Jaguars that got sentenced last week. Feel like that's a good place to start. Good morning.
Morning, Craig. Yeah, Katie Strang of The Athletic, who I believe broke the story on Amit Patel stealing $22 million from the Jaguars, his former employer, to fund his gambling habit and a lavish lifestyle. She ended up getting the first interview with him since his sentencing. Patel was sentenced to 78 months in federal prison after pleading guilty to crimes of stealing, obviously, money to fund his gambling habit and the lavish lifestyle. And I think the most interesting thing, I would encourage everybody to read this on The Athletic. Katie is a tremendous reporter, my former colleague. We were both at ESPN New York, is that when he gets out of prison, Craig, he is going to be sentenced to pay $250 a month to the Jaguars. He owes them $21.1 million. So at $250 a month, that's 84,000 months, 7,000 years it would take him to pay that money back. Just an incredible number. Again, I encourage everybody to read the whole story. I mean, that's the one figure that I think stands out. Just going through how he got caught, he said a VP rep at FanDuel would give him 10% for every $600,000 he spent there. So obviously FanDuel was encouraging him. Certainly they have VIP clients. A lot of them fund a significant portion of profits for these sports books. And so, he even said when he was at Deloitte before he got to the Jaguars, he had used the corporate account to fund his gambling habit, and his brother ended up paying the money back. And so the company, I don't think, ever found out. So this is a guy that had a gambling habit. That was kind of his defense on why he should get less time. The prosecutor didn't agree with that. But again, I think he was facing like 30 years. So the fact he got 6.5, I mean, that seems like a pretty big win. The fact that he, probably, I think the prosecutor and his attorneys obviously say he's never going to pay this $21.1 million back. Maybe he ends up with a book deal, a movie, because again, Craig, you and I talked about, this is a once-in-a-lifetime story. A lot of people don't look good here. I mean, it's certainly the Amit Patel, the Jaguars for allowing this to happen, as perfect as the sequence of events for it to happen. And then, FanDuel, whether it was this case or not, how much is too much for anybody, especially when you don't know where the money's coming from for this particular guy who embezzled this money to be able to fund his gambling habit. So, certainly a lot to learn here. You hope he does the time and makes good of it. He said, I can be somebody that can help people and certainly tell people what not to do. But this is an incredible story. And Katie's done an amazing job. Would encourage everybody to read the article. But yeah, 7,000 years to pay this back, Craig. I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. But as you said, sometimes a negative can turn into a positive. Maybe this guy gets out in 7 years, decides to tell his story. Maybe helps other people, by the way. I mean, that would be nice, too, to, shy people away. It seems like you're right. The sportsbook operators, the DFS operators at this point are kind of like, we don't want to talk about this anymore. We took all the money. We're not culpable. Anyway, how about culpability? I guess that's the next topic here with this Thrive Fantasy, this fantasy operator that so many folks have gone to social media complaining about not getting paid out. Finally, a statement was released late last year about some of the issues that they had trying to get additional funding to stay alive. But I mean, I suppose, Mike, it's like, what kind of message can you send to people who don't get paid? This is the dynamic that you never want to see in this industry. I just hope in the end, somehow, all of the players get something back for what they put into it. But I would say that optimism is not on their side at the moment.
Craig, you're absolutely right. And that's why we, at Legal Sports Report, Catena Media, you guys at SportsGrid, always encourage people, go to the sites that are protected in your state. Go on your state gaming commission website, check, is this fantasy site that I'm playing on regulated? FanDuel, DraftKings are, but there's some of these other ones. I mean, a lot of the times as a reporter, because this industry is so big, we learn of these companies like Thrive Fantasy and No House Advantage, which shuttered its doors. Looks like Thrive is going to do the same. And these players who are owed thousands of dollars, some 5-figure balances, some have been paid a little bit, but, may not get all the money they're owed. And that's super disappointing. I mean, even if you go on Twitter as of this morning, people are asking what's going on at Thrive. So our Sam McQuillan reporting that they tried to have another funding round It didn't work out, and it looks like they're going to shutter their doors. That's according to sources who spoke with Sam. So again, another cautionary tale. Very disappointing for people that invested in this site, thought they were going to get paid out accordingly if they won money. Some of them did, and the company ended up citing fraud as to why it didn't have the money. The CEO has been very quiet since initially talking to me when we kind of uncovered a lot of this stuff, or at least brought it to light because it was on some of those social media sites that people weren't being paid out. And another disappointing story for the industry. And again, maybe it's not the bigger operators. Obviously, Prize Picks and Underdog are dealing with their own sort of situation with Against the House, as we'll talk about later in the segment. But a lot of these smaller operators, I mean, again, if you're a consumer, you've got to be careful, protect yourself. Unfortunately, we wish we could put it out there for everybody that says this site is unregulated on that Thrive Fantasy or wherever it is. Don't put your money here, or at least don't put your life savings in because you don't know if you can get it out. But again, these should be basic protections. The bottom line is, regulators and legislators need to crack down just as much as these smaller sites as they do the bigger ones. And you hope everybody learns something from this and these people can get made whole, Craig, but it doesn't appear that's going to happen.
No, very, very tough situation, to say the least there. And tough situation all around the country with these daily fantasy operators finding they don't have a place to operate anymore. Seems to be the case now in Massachusetts as well. As Mike, we have an update with more operators getting letters finding out, hey, your time is coming to an end.
Right, Craig. So those operators, those 10, it wasn't Prize Picks and Underdog. Some of the smaller ones, certainly we've heard of Sleeper. That's a big one. Yahoo was in the mix with that 10. 9 of those 10 operators, which received cease and desist to stop offering Against the House Pick'em, they have said, we either stopped doing that as of March 8, which was the deadline, or we never offered them. I think there's one operator, which I don't know who it is. Contact the Massachusetts Attorney General's office. Haven't heard back as to who that was, but pretty much almost total compliance here with operators obviously complying with the law, shutting down their Against the House Pick'em, or saying we didn't offer it in the first place. 90%. You hope that this other unknown operator does the same. So yeah, Against the House Fantasy is under fire. A lot of states have cracked down on it. Underdog and Prize Picks in Massachusetts didn't get C&D letters because they went to peer-to-peer as opposed to Against the House player versus house fantasy, which is legislators and regulators cracking down on, saying this is too close to mirroring sports betting parlays, for example. Massachusetts, that's what the AG's office said. So yeah, this is something that continues to be a storyline. We'll be following it here, and we'll hopefully get an update as to which operator that is, and hopefully they are in compliance in Massachusetts, so all 10 that got the C&Ds have shut down their Against the House fantasy operations here, as more states looking to crack down. And, a story that's not going away, but it looks like Against the House Fantasy is going away, at least on illegal sports betting and DFS platforms.
Yeah, and a good segue to the next state that's trying to do this, which appears to be, Mike, Colorado, and that's where we'll end today. But naturally, this just shouldn't be a surprise, as we've seen every state do this, where sports betting is legal. Honestly, Mike, I'm waiting for the story about the state that says you can stay if you do X, Y, and Z, because that has yet to happen. It's just like every single operator's got to get out, almost because I feel like they just simply can't afford maybe to pay the sports betting tax that the operators do, because otherwise I've heard nothing about any of them trying to at least attempt to stay.
Right, Craig. Yeah, right. I mean, FanDuel, DraftKings, they've been in the right to say we're paying the full freight here, and these other companies are operating close to what we're offering when we're paying like you said, the sports betting taxes per month in these states. And so, in Colorado, come Thursday, there's going to be a vote supposedly with the legislative committee as far as whether DFS can stay in the state. We saw the Gaming Commission in Colorado crack down on Against the House Pick'em in January. So Prize Picks sent out an email to all their consumers saying, you need to reach out to your representatives or the Gaming Commission and say, hey, we want to keep this. But I mean, based on what's happened in other states, as you pointed out, Craig, I'd be surprised if that happens. It's a question of whether the date is Thursday or not. I think Sam McQuillan spoke to it was either the Gaming Commission or the Legislative Committee. They said that might not be the day. But regardless, this is a topic, whether it gets decided Thursday or not, that is, as prevalent throughout the country. And if they do vote Thursday, it would be a shocker, again, given all the other states, if they decided, okay, Against the House Pick'em and DFS can hang around. Maybe they do the peer-to-peer, that Prize Picks and Underdog have gone to in some states where they can't do Against the House. Maybe that's the compromise here. But Against the House Pick'em in Colorado, I'd be shocked if it survives. It seems to be already shut down, but if it survives past the Thursday vote.
Yeah. Real quick, Mike, before you go, have you guys followed this story about this Temple game that they played, I guess, about a month ago with the point spread that changed significantly? Does this seem much ado about nothing? I find it hard to believe that a team would just, shave or tank in one game, especially a good team.
Yeah, Craig. So there was multiple, instances apparently of this. And so the probe is still ongoing, U.S. Integrity, the conference, Temple University itself. Did end up losing yesterday in the conference title game. That would have been incredible, Craig. That would have been an incredible story. Team with possible point shaving in the NCAA tournament didn't happen. No. One note, they were not offered in New York. All those games, some operators were offering Temple, some weren't. In New York over the weekend, you could not bet on Temple basketball at any of the regulated operators. So a story we'll be watching here. But, Temple basketball is done, but the probe not over yet. So we'll see whether there's point shaving. For the NCAA's sake, you hope not.
Yeah, definitely want to follow that story as we go on. All right, Mike, great stuff. As always, awesome content for you. Enjoy the NCAA tournament. We'll catch up again next week.
Thanks, Craig. You too.
All right, Mike Mazzeo with us. More NCAA tournament talk with Coach Young up next. Don't go away.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament. That's the Purdue that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home.
Tennessee's now in my phony club. They should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This
is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State rule.
Be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I bought into Tennessee with their veteran team. I really did. But that's, out the window. That ship has sailed today.
A team that wins no games in their conference tournament has never gone on to win the national championship. So you can put Tennessee in that boat. You can put Duke in that boat from last night. You can put Creighton in that boat from last night. They all lost their first conference tournament game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart teams.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. The madness is begun already in the NCAA tournament. Of course, Tuesday night are the play-in games, followed by Wednesday, the first four, and then it all gets started Thursday afternoon at noon Eastern. Coach Young will be a big part of our SportsGrid coverage all week and all weekend long. Let's take our first look at the brackets in the NCAA tournament. And, Coach, we go from being upset about the snubs and the seedings and who's in and who's out and did they get it right and did they get it wrong. And then we don't have a lot of time. That's what I like about this tournament. We don't have a lot of time to be upset about that because the games begin so quickly. So thanks for coming on the show this morning.
And Craig, this is obviously a great time of year, and buckle up, folks. The best, in my opinion, 3 weeks of sports starts now.
Yeah, let's get started and take a look at the East region bracket where UConn is the number one team in the country, Coach. And a lot of the brackets that are being filled out predominantly will have UConn winning it all. They take on Stetson on Friday. Obviously, we'll break down all of these games against the spread, but that's a good place to start, Coach, is that we went through a time period, like sort of an overview, I would say, on this tournament, Coach, where we had 2 or 3 years where a lot of the number one seeds were going to the end. They were getting to the Final Four, getting to the championship, and then the tournament the last couple of years has been flipped on its head with crazy upsets again. What kind of tournament do you think we're in store for this year?
Well, I think it's going to round back into form with number one seeds. I have multiple, actually 3 number one seeds getting to the Final Four. I think, Craig, what you have is the NIL, the transfer portal, and the kids getting an extra COVID year. Those 3 things have really turned NCAA on its head. Why, folks? Roster turnover. So the roster's turning over year after year, and sometimes teams figuring it out. Craig, is it better to build your roster through the portal? Is it better to build their roster through freshmen and build them up? A lot of turnover, a lot of craziness. I still think you get craziness in the tournament. Maybe not so much the top 3 one seeds. With UConn specifically, Craig, they're a favorite for a reason. They're playing better basketball than anybody in the country. And think about this, folks. Since the beginning of January, they have not, the furthest south they've had to travel is D.C. to play Georgetown. The farthest west he had to go to Creighton, right? So they haven't had to travel and leave the Eastern time zone, and now the pathway goes regular season. Big East tournament was at MSG, first 2 rounds at Barclays, and then their East regional final is at Boston. So you should have a heavy UConn contingent to cheer on the Huskies.
Yeah, I think what makes this region so interesting as we continue our conversation here, Coach, is that someone's got to be wrong here. Some odds have got to be wrong here because I'm seeing so many big favorites in this region. BYU minus 8.5, Auburn minus 12.5, UConn minus 26, San Diego State minus 7.5. If the tournament has taught us anything through the years, I mean, there's going to be a huge upset and there's going to be a huge money line win among some of these teams. Now, I don't know which one it's going to be. I mean, that's the fun of picking these games and picking the tournament. But I am surprised to see the disparity in the point spreads in so many of these games in this region.
Well, you got to look at some of the teams that got in. For instance, Duquesne coming out of the Atlantic 10, they weren't supposed to be in there. That was a big stealer. You could look at Yale as a 13th seed. I mean, the best team in that league far and away was Princeton. And that's the crazy thing, Craig, is to get to the NCAA tournament automatic qualifier, you just got to get hot at the right time, and some of these teams did. Now, in the East Regional, the only I guess you would call it underdog to I think win is probably Drake over Washington State. That's a very slim line. The rest of them is pretty much chalk. I do think 8-9 Florida Atlantic versus Northwestern is interesting, although I do think FAU is the better team. And folks, when you get to this region, listen, I know UConn is a favorite, but Iowa State, you saw what they did to Houston over the weekend. I'm still shocked that they got such a low 2 seed to be in that East regional bracket, almost like the worst 2 seed they got. But then if you look at them, Illinois winning the Big Ten, the way they could score with Terrence Shannon Jr., and don't sleep on Auburn as a 4 seed. Bruce Pearl's got a great job. Broome is an absolute stud. Holloway, really good freshman. Bouncy, athletic team. They can beat you in multiple styles. It should be UConn, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as people think for them to get to the Final Four.
Yeah, Coach, now listen, you know a lot more about this than me. But you mean to tell me that between South Dakota State, Morehead State, Duquesne, Yale, and UAB, none of those teams are going to win outright? Because I'm telling you right now, I think one absolutely does. I don't know which one, but I mean, isn't that what happens every year?
It happens every year. I just don't see it with Iowa State. With Illinois, they just scored a ball with Creighton. You get worried about Illinois because of the fact that sometimes they don't defend well enough. So, yeah, you can look at that 3-14 as maybe something to circle at. BYU shoots the lights out. Duquesne just got hot at the right time, getting all the way to the A-10 final and winning it. And then UAB, folks, I mean, look what happened in their conference tournament, and look at the craziness and the madness that went on there. I mean, it beat Temple. We didn't even know Temple cared about the game because we don't know so there's so many different things with the East. Yeah, I don't want to go there, but to me, I do think the East they do have more than just UConn. I just think it may be more chalk on the first round, except for maybe Drake beating Washington State.
Okay, fair enough. We'll see. All right, now over in the West bracket, North Carolina, after that win against Duke and then doing what they did in the tournament, 22.5-point favorites over whoever wins between Howard and Wagner tomorrow night. We'll start there. Mississippi State against Michigan State. It's Izzo season again. Obviously, they're getting 1.5 points. We have St. Mary's taking on Grand Canyon. St. Mary's 5.5-point favorites. Bama's had a fantastic season, 9.5-point favorites against Charleston. Clemson in the 6-11. New Mexico, I see here, 1.5-point favorite. Baylor, as they should, a huge favorite over Colgate. And then Dayton, Nevada, the 7-10, basically a pick'em game, Nevada -1.5. So a lot of compelling games here, much closer spreads.
You know, the Tom Izzo gets from the selection committee. Interesting game versus Mississippi State. Here's the thing I want to say. If Michigan State wins, I wouldn't. Ready, folks? I won't be stunned if they beat North Carolina. Prepping for Tom Izzo on a one-day prep is problematic because of the adjustments that he could think of in his head before the game and then in game. So to me, that's interesting. Michigan State either is going to go to the Sweet 16 or they're going to get knocked out in the first round. Grand Canyon, I think, can pick off St. Mary's. They have a dynamic player, a guard that can really score the ball. They got pros in that team. Alabama, Charleston, folks, get your track shoes on. Up and down, ton of points. Neither team plays defense. New Mexico with Richard Pitino. I thought they should have been in. I thought the 11th seed was a little bit too high. But this is a team, folks, if they could turn around and they could win some games here with the way that they play both offensively and defensively. Baylor actually have going to the Final Four. Dayton, Nevada, it wouldn't be surprised if Nevada wins. That's why they're favored. I think Dayton is a little bit overvalued. They didn't have a good year. I think their seed was way too high. Arizona, all about Wool. Omar Ballo get the ball. If Caleb Love and these guys bomb away and don't feed the big fella, they are a 40-minute game of not shooting well, of getting knocked out early.
All right, now let's move over to the Midwest bracket, and Purdue is going to get the winner of Montana State, Grambling State. Naturally, Purdue is one of those teams where you hit that button to take them, and you're like, I don't know if I feel great about this, but that's the way it goes with them every year. Utah State against TCU, a game to circle here. Gonzaga, 6.5-point favorites against McNeese State. What a big matchup for McNeese State. Is this big for Gonzaga? Can they push through here? Kansas struggling into their season, 7.5-point favorites over Samford. South Carolina, a narrow favorite over Oregon. We have Creighton taking on Akron. Texas against the winner of Virginia, Colorado State. And then St. Peter's is back in the NCAA tournament. Although they are the 15th seed this year, they're 20.5-point dogs to Tennessee. So, a lot of people, think, Coach, hey, Kansas gets hot at the right time. Maybe they run. Creighton, they're the 3 seed. Maybe they run. It's just, honestly, Coach, it's hard to back Purdue coming out of this thing after what they've done the last few years. It just is.
Yeah, and I think people have been watching. It doesn't matter what Purdue does the entire regular season of the Big Ten tournament. They're going to be judged on what happens in the next 3 weeks. Can they make a serious run? To me, with Purdue, it's not about Zach Edey because he's going to bring it. It's going to be about the guard play. Jones, Lawyer, Gillis. They got to knock down threes. They all shoot the ball pretty much at 40% from three, but you're relying on guards to knock down threes, and they're not the strongest defensive team because they're not overly athletic. TCU or Utah State could give them a run. When you look at some other games in this region, folks, really quick, this could be upset central, and I really do think it is. McNeese State could easily take out Gonzaga. Will Wade, think about what you want off the court. On the court, he's a great coach with a great team that's won a bunch of games in a row. Kansas, with the injuries to McCullough and Dickinson, they have issues with that. Samford, who can really push the pace and shoot the ball from three, can easily knock them out. How about Oregon at the 11th slot? The way that they have played with Dana Altman supposedly being out and retiring, the run that they've made playing against the South Carolina team, that's really, really quirky. And Creighton, who I think will make a run and get all the way to the Elite Eight, don't sleep on Akron. I know they got it on a really quirky play when Kent State scored to take the lead, and then the kid fouled up by one, not knowing the score, and they lost by one. An intriguing matchup you have going on here. There could be a lot of upsets in the first round in the Midwest.
All right, let's close it out with the South here. Houston, one of the number one seeds in the NCAA tournament, 24.5-point favorites over Longwood. Nebraska will take on Texas A&M. I've seen a lot of backing, by the way, for the Aggies, too. Wisconsin, -5.5 against James Madison. Is this a 12-5 upset? Duke takes on Vermont. Texas Tech against NC State. The Wildcats are going to be a really hard team to handicap, Coach, in this tournament. No doubt about that. A young team, how far can that youth take them? Hey, the Gators have been playing great basketball, Coach. I mean, I think normally I'm a little cautious with them, but I feel like backing them in this tournament, and that's my team. And then Marquette takes on Western Kentucky. They should be okay getting their player back for this upcoming week.
Yeah, Tyler Kolek, the star guard, All-American with the oblique injury. That's a tricky injury. Hopefully gets back. When you talk about this region, it is Houston to lose, and good luck to Longwood. After the way they got drubbed, Houston, by 30-some-odd points by Iowa State, I think 23.5 points or 24.5 is not enough. I think Houston wins by a huge margin. I think they're over-under for Longwood. It's like 51.5. I think it's going to be under because I just think Houston is going to be in a really foul mood. You could see some upsets here. James Madison with 31 wins taking out Wisconsin. This is because the James Madison team really, really good offensively, underrated defensively versus a Wisconsin team that does struggle to defend. Vermont over Duke. Duke could be a really tricky team because they're wildly inconsistent. When you go to the bottom half, Kentucky is intriguing because they don't defend. But they got 6 kids that could score at the guard spot. Any one of them can give you 20 points any given time. So that will be interesting. I think Florida, Craig, is in trouble, to be honest with you. Boise State and Colorado both defend the ball really well. Florida just tries to go up-tempo. If you slow them down and make it a half-court game, they tend to struggle. But then again, Marquette, if they have Kolek, they can go all the way maybe to a Final Four. If they don't have Kolek, they could lose by the end of the weekend. Remember, Shaka Smart only once has cleared the round of 32. That was VCU Final Four run in 2011.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Biggest upset alert of the week. What do you got?
I like Stanford to take out Kansas in the 13-4 game. I think that's big. I think you'll look at JMU also to take out Wisconsin, Grand Canyon to take out St. Mary's, and also, obviously, we talked about Drake taking out Washington State.
All right, there you go, Coach. We'll see you all week long here on SportsGrid. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Craig. See you next week.
All right, we'll wrap it up next.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament. That's the review that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home.
Tennessee's now in my phony club. They should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now. We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is a guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
This
is the Penn State
rule. Be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I bought into into Tennessee with their veteran team. I really did. But that's, out the window. That ship has sailed today.
A team that wins no games in their conference tournament has never gone on to win the national championship. So you can put Tennessee in that boat. You can put Duke in that boat from last night. You can put Creighton in that boat from last night. They all lost their first conference tournament game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart teams.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live. Prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live. Overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back. Sort of a rare occurrence coming here for the NCAA tournament. We have a fired coach who's going to be coaching his last game, potentially, with the school. This is Dan Monson, 62 years old, been at Long Beach State for a really long time, fired earlier in the week, told that he was not going to return to coach at Long Beach State next season, and then all of a sudden leads the team to the NCAA tournament. This is an absolutely true story. So how about that? How far can a coach go like this? Will the players back him? Needless to say, it's certainly interesting. They are plus 1,600 on the money line. Arizona is 20.5-point favorites. Total is 161 in that game. Congrats to Dan Monson, cutting down the nets, getting fired. What a sort of odd circumstance. But here we are with Long Beach State getting to the NCAA tournament and backing their head coach, who I guess is not going to be there next year. Could they go back on that and say, maybe we made a mistake? I don't know. Remains to be seen. All right, that will do it for our show today. Thanks to our great guests, Mike Mazzeo from Legal Sports Report, Jacob Camenker from Sporting News, and then Coach Young. Naturally, thanks to our associate producer, Frank, and our producer, Michael. I am Craig Mish. Now, coming up next, we have got the early line at 12 o'clock Eastern, and that is followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast. Pharrell is in the house at 3 o'clock Eastern. So for those of you who are going to fill out a bracket, because there's a lot of you out there that are watching for the NCAA tournament, or you plan on betting the NCAA tournament, this is your spot. From now all the way through Sunday, we have live coverage through all of the games, whether it's Tuesday night or Wednesday nights playing games, or all throughout the day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'll be with you all week long, Monday through Thursday. I'm off Friday, but I'll be with you all week long from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, and I will be sort of your pseudo pregame show, getting you ready for all the big games. So I hope you can stay with us, because we do a fantastic job. Our Super Bowl coverage doesn't even compare to what we do for this upcoming tournament here on SportsGrid. So hope to see you tomorrow, same time, same place, 11 a.m. Eastern, for our next edition of NewsWire. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. The early line is next.